Now we will see about object destructuring. So let's say I have a profile object, name Mike, age 30, and then say address, city New York, state New York. Now to get the individual properties of that particular object, previously with ES5 code, what we need to write is, we write it like this. So it was var name equal to profile dot name. Then again it will be age equal to profile dot age. Then it will be address equal to profile dot address. Then for city we take address dot city, and this will be state. And now if we print all of the values, name, age, address, city, and state, you can see all the values are getting printed. So we correctly get those values. But this is a lot of code. So to get all the properties, you need to write this extra lot of code. So instead of this, we have now object destructuring. So instead of all of this, now what we can do is we can write it ES6 way. So what we do is we use const. So always use const or let. Now you need to define from which object you need to take properties. So I say profile. So from profile I want to take name property. So we can destructure the name property. Similarly age and address. So this line of code, so when I just say const name equal to profile, this line is exactly same as this line. So what this line is doing, we are creating a name variable and taking value from profile dot name. So this is exactly same. So we are creating a name variable and taking value from profile dot name. So this name has to be there in the profile property. So if I print it name here, you will correctly see my getting printed. So if there's some property, that property does not exist, you will get undefined. So if I say, so if I check for salary, which does not exist, then you will get, so you can see we get undefined. So you will not get error because you are directly accessing one property of that particular profile object which does not exist. So you will get undefined. So only you can destructure properties. So the name has to match. So instead of name, if you say names, then you will get undefined because there is no names property. You can see it's undefined. So this line of code means you are creating a const variable. So instead of var, it will be const. So you are creating const name and taking value from profile dot name. So that's the name of, that's the meaning of that particular statement. Now you can destructure multiple properties in a single line. So you can see now we have covered these three lines in a single line. Now this city and state are nested properties, so you can destructure on separate line address, and you can take out city and state. So this address is a separate object which we have already destructured. So from address we are taking out city and state. So we'll add it in curly bracket. So we'll print age, address, city, and state. So you can see you get all the values which we want. So this curly bracket is a shortcut. So what it does is it's creating object with exact same property name. So you are creating a property age and taking value from age variable. So as the name and as the key and value are same, so we don't need to repeat this. So it's good to identify which properties we are using. Now if you don't add curly bracket, it's difficult to identify which property belongs to which variable. So what is 30, what is this NOI, what is this NOI, it's difficult to understand. So you can just add a curly bracket around that and you will get exact name of that property and the value. So if this is London, You can see you get City of London. So using this destructuring syntax, you write a less code. So you can see you just add a curly bracket symbol, and whatever properties you want to destructure, you can take out. So if something is nested property, you separate take out in the separate line. You can do on the same line also. So here after colon, you can add another destructuring syntax, and you can say state and city. This also works. You can see from profile we are destructuring name, age and address. So from address we are destructuring state and city. So address is not defined, we are getting error because now address property you are not using. You are destructuring from that state and city. So now address does not exist. That's why here you are getting error. So if I don't print address, you have city and state. So you can see you correctly get that data. But if I want address also, so you need to destructure that separately. So here I can add address property. So you can see here you get address property with city and state. So if once you add colon, that property you cannot access. You are using another name. You are destructuring that nested property. Now this address is optional thing. So if you are updating profile and address is optional thing, then what you can do? So let's say your address is optional. Now what will happen? So you are destructuring city and state of address property, and the address itself does not exist. So you are destructuring undefined. So let me write it in this way so you will understand better. So you can see you are getting cannot restructure property city of address as it is undefined. So here I am destructuring address property from profile, and from address I am destructuring city and state. But this address is undefined. So if I don't destructure this and just I will print address, you will get this address as undefined. You can see address is undefined, and you are trying to destructure property city and state from undefined. So when you destructure something from undefined, you will get an error, JavaScript error, because you can only destructure objects and you cannot destructure undefined. So you will get error. So this line of code is creating that error, throwing that error on line number 18. This line, because address is undefined right now, we have commented out. So this address is optional thing. So I don't, address is optional, so but still I want to access that address. If it exists, I want to print city and state. If it does not exist, I don't want to print that value. So what you can do is you can add a fallback property. So after address you can add or an object symbol, empty object. So what this means, if this address is undefined, assign a default value of empty object. So now if I print here city and state, you will not get any error. You can see address is undefined, city is undefined, state is undefined. So you are getting undefined values, but you are not getting any error. So that's a good thing. So whenever you are destructuring nested properties like address, so you need to remember you always add a fallback property, otherwise you will get error. So right now if you assume that you have address property and you write this code, it will always work. So even without this fallback property it will work and you think everything is working fine, but that is not the case. If something is optional, you need to think in that way also. If this is going to be optional, this address is not going to come, so it will not be there, so only name and age is there. So in this case now you will get error, cannot destructure. So you always, whenever you are doing nested destructuring, always assign a fallback property. So this you can, so instead of this you can do it here also. So now I can destructure this, rename this to address and city. Now with this line of code you can see you are still getting error because you are not assigning any values. So you are, what you can do is you can assign empty object here. So you can see now you get correct undefined value. So even if the address is not there, you are not getting error. So what this means, from profile destructure address property, and from that address property destructure city and state. And if the address itself does not exist, assign default value of empty object. So that's the meaning of this entire statement. Now let's say this is the name. So if user has not entered his name is optional thing, you are not accepting while login, you are only accepting email and password. So user might not have filled in name. So in that case, so when you are displaying like welcome Mike or welcome guest, so if user has no name, I want to display guest. So what I can do, so let's say Mike name does not exist, I have only age property. Now you can see name is undefined, but if I want to display welcome dollar of name, you can see you get welcome undefined, but I don't want undefined. If there is no user with that particular any name, then I want to display guest, so I can assign a default value of guest here. Now you get welcome guest, which is correct. So what I am doing here, from profile I am destructuring name property. If name property does not exist, we are assigning a default value of guest. So this guest will only be assigned if that property does not exist or it's undefined. So if I bring back that name, now you will not see guest, you will see Mike here. You can see you get welcome Mike. So this default value will only be used if that property does not exist or it's undefined. So if I make this undefined, what will get, you will get guest back, because this name property is undefined. So let me bring that back to Mike. So now you can also, so let's say I already have a name property, so I already have a variable with name. So let's say Jerry. So I already have another variable with name property, and from this profile I am also getting name property. So how can I access that profile name? So I cannot remove this because I already have variable this and I am using at multiple places. So what can you do in this case? So in this case you can rename this name variable while destructuring. So I can add name colon, I can say username. So I am destructuring name property from profile and I am renaming it to username. Now this name does not exist. Destructuring name property of profile and I am renaming it to username. And if the name property does not exist, I am assigning a default value of guest. So what I am doing here, name, now I need to use this username. Instead of name it will be username. You can see you correctly get Mike. I cannot use name because name does not exist, I have renamed it to username. So once you rename, you cannot use this original value. So here I am using city and state, so I have destructured those. So now this address does not exist, so that's why I need to separately destructure address property. So here name does not exist. So when you are renaming something, your previous property that you are destructuring, you cannot use that. So you need to use this username property. And if the name property does not exist, you are assigning a default value of guest. So here you will see Mike printed because you have this name property. But if I comment that out, now there is no name property. So from profile we are destructuring name property which does not exist. So it will assign a default value of guest and we are renaming name to username. So you will get guest as the result. We can see welcome guest is getting printed. So you don't have to destructure everything. Let's say I don't want name and address. So what I can do is I can just print this age and address. So you can see age is there and address is undefined. If I bring this back address, you will see address is also there, city and state. So you can destructure only the properties which you want, and order also does not matter. So even though while creating the profile object you have age before and then address, so while destructuring you don't have to destructure in the same order, you can change that order. So I can destructure address first, age later. You can see it still works, you still get the result. So while destructuring, the order does not matter, the name matters. So whatever you are destructuring has to match with the property name. So if that property you are destructuring does not exist, you will get undefined. So what if thus you are using nested property? So in this case, if this property does not exist, then I am destructuring this, and if you don't assign any value, you will get error because you are trying to access state. So always assign a default value, fallback value, whenever you are destructuring nested property. So that's how you can access nested property. This destructuring is very useful. You can use while passing to function also. So let's say, let me comment this out. Let's say I have function get users and I am making API call. So let's check if I have Axios. Yes. So now I can, this should be const get users, and here I am making Axios call, axios.get. Let's say I am making API call for random users API. So random user generator, this is the free API, very useful. And here if you go to documentation, you can get all those API data. So let's say this is the API. Now I have these 100 users, so you can see I have list of 100 users, and you can also pass optional more parameters here. So let's say I want only users with female gender, let's say male. So I want all users with gender male, and you can add extra parameters also here. So format, you can add nationality also. So let me add nationality also, GB. Now I want to make API call to this particular URL. I will use async await syntax. So if you are not aware of async await, check out my this linked video. I will destructure data property directly. I will use await. Now I can print this data property. Now what I get, so first I need to call this function, and now if you check, you can see we get results which is list of 100 users. As I mentioned, I want gender of male and nationality of Great Britain. So you can see all these genders are male, there is not no single female because I have specified a property query parameter of male, and the nationality you can find in the location. So location, country, you can see it's United Kingdom. So you correctly get all users are of nationality, you can see country United Kingdom. So let's say I want to access this data, let me print data dot results. So you will better see it. So all these are users. Now this is hard coded, but I don't want hard coded, I want dynamic data. So I will make API call, I need to specify what parameter I want to pass. So I can accept those parameters as an object. So I will destructure that. Let's say I want results, then I also want, I will be passing gender also and nationality. So this I am passing here. So let's say I am passing an object. Let's say results, I want 15 users, and all these should be gender female, and let's say nationality of US. Now this result gender nationality I need to use it here. So this is hard coded. Now I will convert it into template literal syntax. Check out this video if you are not aware of template literal, and here I will interpolate that result. So instead of male, dollar of gender. So this should be results and nationality dollar of nat. Now I am passing these values and I will get that dynamic data. So if you check here in the network tab, let me bring, so inside fetch, if I refresh, you can see you are making API call to this particular URL results 15. You can also see in payload result 15 gender female nationality US, and you get all these results. You can see all these are female, and if you check the nationality location, you can see it's United States. So you correctly get that data. Now let's say I want, now next, instead of results 15 I want results 10. So I don't always want to pass this results data. So all these parameters are optional. So how can we do that? So this is the object we are passing. That's why we are destructuring those properties. The name has to match, that only you will be able to destructure. Now I don't want to always pass results, so I want default results of 10. So if I don't pass results, I want 10 results. So how can I do that? You can see you can assign a default value. So as we have seen here, you can see I have assigned a default value of guest if it does not exist. So similarly here I am assigning a default value of 10 if results property does not exist. So in this case we don't have results property, so it will have value of 10. And now for the first API call you have 15 results, second API call you have 10 results with nationality of, let's say, male, and again Great Britain. I go to, you can see this is the first API call, you are 15 female and US, and for the second API call you have 10 male and GB, and that data you get all the males, here all are female. So you correctly get that data, but this is like you are doing extra things. So all these properties are optional. So even if I don't pass gender, I want all males. If I don't pass nationality, I want US. So this will be correct. Now I don't want to pass, so this is fine for this case. Now let's say for the third API call I don't want to pass anything, so I am not passing, I am passing empty object which I am destructuring. So now in this case it will use default value of 10 users, gender male and nationality of US. So you can see you have 3 API call. So in this third API call you are getting results 10 gender male and nationality of US. So you correctly pass that data. But I always need to pass this object, empty object. What if I don't pass that? So while calling I am not passing anything. If I save, you will get an error. You can see cannot read properties of undefined reading results. So why you are getting this error? Because you are not passing anything to get users function, which is undefined. When you don't pass anything, it's undefined, and you are trying to destructure these properties of undefined, so you will get error. So to avoid that, so I don't want to pass empty object, this does not look good. So I can just, I don't pass anything, still I want to get this working. So how can I do? You can assign a default fallback of empty object. So if I don't pass anything, this empty object will be used, and these properties result, gender, nationality will be destructured from that empty object. Results, gender and nationality. So what you get? You will get everything. You can see results 10. I am destructuring an empty object. So if I am not passing here, this empty object will be used, and I am destructuring these properties. So these properties does not exist in this object. So the default values will be used. So results will have 10 value, gender will have male. So you can see the last API call is for the same. So gender results 10, gender male, and nationality US. In network tab, you can see that. So if I move this up, you can see for the third API call 1, 2, 3. So for third API call, you are passing this data. So you need to remember whenever you have something optional, you need to assign a default value. So we are destructuring from the object, so you are assigning a default value of object. So and whenever you are using await, make sure to always use try catch. So if anything goes wrong, your application will not stop. That is very important to understand. So if you are not aware of promises, check out the linked video. So that's how promise object destructuring is useful. So you can pass any object to any function and you can directly destructure. So this you can destructure separately also. So let's say I am passing this as user. So I can say const equal to user. So I'm destructuring this property, and if it does not exist, assign default value of empty. So you can see it still works. You are still getting the same result. So this line of code is exactly same as writing this, and you are assigning default value here inside this. So after this curly bracket, you are assigning default value of empty object. So this user, you can write it like this, and it still works. I always prefer writing it like this. You will see if you are working with React, you will see destructuring directly used instead of writing it on separate line. So this is all about object destructuring.